I built the environmental safety protocols for Sanders Shipyard from the ground up, keeping them legal and profitable for 15 years. But when new management arrived, Benjamin Hughes decided my permits were just expensive suggestions. He fired me for refusing to break federal law, thinking he'd saved a few bucks. He didn't know I was the only one certified to sign off on his work, or that the EPA was already watching. The smell of a shipyard is distinct. It's a heavy, metallic cocktail of ozone, diesel fumes, and the briny, rotting scent of the harbor at low tide. For 20 years, that smell had been my perfume. It was the scent of industry, of commerce, and, if I was doing my job right, of compliance. At 7:00 a.m. on a Tuesday in mid-November, the air in Dry Dock 4 was crisp, hovering around 45 degrees. My breath misted in front of me as I adjusted my hard hat and tightened the straps of my safety vest. I wasn't just walking the yard for exercise, I was looking for holes. "Morning, Emilia," Tony grunted. He was the yard foreman, a man whose skin looked like cured leather and who had been welding steel since the Reagan administration. He was leaning against a massive rusted hull, holding a steaming styrofoam cup of coffee. "Morning, Tony," I replied, not breaking my stride. "How's the containment skirt looking on the starboard side?" Tony grimaced, taking a slow sip. "Wind's picking up. It's flapping a bit loose near the keel blocks. I've got the guys trying to tape it down, but—" "Tape isn't going to cut it, Tony," I said, stopping to look him in the eye. "We're blasting lead-based anti-fouling paint today. If that dust hits the water, it's a violation of the Clean Water Act. Section 402, you know the drill." I know," Tony sighed, looking tired. "But the new schedule, Hughes wants the blasting done by noon so the painters can prime by 2. If we stop to re-rig the containment, we lose half the day." "If we don't stop," I said, my voice dropping to that steely register I reserved for serious business, "we lose the license to operate." I walked past him, boots crunching on the gravel, and approached the skirt. It was a massive tarp system designed to catch the toxic debris from the sandblasting. It was meant to be a sealed vacuum. Instead, I saw a 3-foot gap where the heavy canvas had torn away from the hull. The wind was already whipping through it. If they turned on the high-pressure blasters now, a cloud of toxic red dust would blow directly into the harbor water. I didn't hesitate. I reached into my vest pocket and pulled out my book of tags. I ripped out a bright, neon red tag, the universal sign for stop. I marched over to the main compressor control panel, the heart of the blasting operation, and zip-tied the tag to the ON switch. I signed it with my Sharpie, E-Wood ENV. Hazard do not remove. "Shut it down, Tony," I called out, my voice echoing off the steel hull. "Nobody pulls a trigger until that skirt is fixed and inspected by me personally." The crew, about 12 guys in white Tyvek suits and respirators, slumped. They knew what a red tag meant. Downtime, no bonus for early completion. "Benjamin isn't going to like this," Tony warned, walking up behind me. He looked nervous, his eyes darting toward the glass windows of the administrative building overlooking the yard. "Benjamin Hughes can like or dislike whatever he wants," I said, checking my watch. It was 7:15 a.m. "But unless he wants to personally drink a glass of lead-contaminated harbor water, he's going to wait." I didn't know it then, but that red tag was the first domino in a chain reaction that would destroy everything I had built there. I thought I was just doing my job, protecting the company from fines. I didn't realize that in the new era of Sanders Shipyard, protection was viewed as obstruction. The confrontation didn't take long. Less than 20 minutes after I tagged the compressor, the heavy steel door of the dry dock access slammed open. Benjamin Hughes didn't walk, he stomped. He was a man in his late 30s who wore suits that cost more than my car, yet he somehow always looked uncomfortable in the shipyard environment. He was the new director of operations, hired 6 months ago by the absentee owner, Mr. Sanders, to streamline efficiencies. In Benjamin's world, efficiency was just a fancy word for cutting corners. He marched across the gravel, ignoring the designated safety walkways, his polished dress shoes getting coated in dust. "Emilia." He barked, his voice shrill against the low hum of the dock generators. Why are my men standing around? I can see them from my office window. They're standing. They aren't blasting. I stood my ground near the compressor, crossing my arms. Good morning, Benjamin. We have a breach in the containment skirt on the starboard side. I've red tagged the operation until it's repaired. He stopped 3 feet from me, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and stress sweat. A breach. It's a little tear, Emilia. It's windy. A little dust is going to escape. It happens. It doesn't happen on my watch, I corrected him calmly. That isn't just dust. It's 40-year-old lead paint and heavy metals. If that plume hits the water, the EPA satellites can pick up the turbidity changes. Or worse, a passing Coast Guard patrol sees it. The fine for a willful discharge starts at $50,000 per day per violation. Benjamin's face turned a shade of red that matched my safety tag. He pointed a shaking finger at the hull. Do you know what the late fees are if we don't get this hull back in the water by Friday? This contract is worth $2 million. I am not losing a $2 million contract because you're worried about a few flakes of paint falling into the ocean. The ocean is huge, Emilia. It can handle it. The law says otherwise, I said, keeping my voice level despite my heart hammering in my chest. And my signature is on the compliance permits. I am the certifying officer. If I say it's unsafe, it's unsafe. He laughed, a cold, sharp sound. You're the certifying officer because we pay you to be. We pay you to facilitate work, not stop it. He turned to Tony, who was studying his boots intently. Tony, cut that tag off. Tony looked up, eyes wide. Mr. Hughes, I can't. That's a federal violation. Only the safety officer can remove a red tag. I am the director of operations. Benjamin shouted, his voice cracking. I am giving you a direct order. Cut the tag off and start the compressors. Now. Tony looked at me, pleading silently for help. Don't do it, Tony, I said firmly. Benjamin, if you override this safety stop, you are committing a felony. I'm documenting this. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the scene, Benjamin pointing, the crew waiting, the torn skirt in the background. Benjamin lunged forward and snatched the tag off the machine himself. He ripped the plastic zip tie with a violent jerk, throwing the red plastic onto the dirty ground. There, he sneered, breathing heavily. The tag is gone. The hazard is gone. He turned to the crew, his eyes wild. Start the damn machines. Just blast it. Anyone who isn't working in 5 minutes is fired. The crew hesitated for a second, looking at me. I shook my head slowly, disappointment washing over me. But they had mortgages. They had kids. One by one, they pulled their masks down and walked toward the hull. You're making a mistake, Benjamin, I said quietly. The only mistake, he hissed, leaning in close, was thinking you had any real power here. Go to your office, Emilia. Get out of my sight. The next 2 hours were a blur of anxious activity. I retreated to my office, a small trailer on the edge of the yard, and did the only thing I could do. I backed up everything. I knew the sound of the compressors roaring to life meant that toxic dust was currently spewing into the harbor. Benjamin had won the battle, but he had just declared war on the environment and, by extension, on me. I logged into the central server. I downloaded the last 5 years of compliance reports, the atmospheric logs, the waste disposal manifests, and most importantly, the email chain where I had explicitly warned Benjamin about the deteriorating containment equipment 3 weeks ago, warnings he had replied to with, budget denied. Make do with what you have. I transferred everything onto a ruggedized, encrypted external hard drive, my black box. I had just finished slipping the drive into my purse when the door opened. It wasn't Tony. It was Jessica from HR, accompanied by 2 security guards I didn't recognize. Jessica was a young woman who hated conflict. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She stared at a spot on the wall just above my left shoulder. Emilia, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Mr. Hughes has filed a report regarding an incident in the yard this morning. You mean the incident where he violated federal law? I asked, standing up. He has cited you for insubordination and obstructing critical operational workflows. Jessica recited, sounding like she was reading from a script. Effective immediately, your employment with Sanders Shipyard is terminated. I felt a cold shock, even though I had expected it. 15 years. I had started here when my daughter was in diapers. I had studied at night to get my Master.S in environmental engineering while working days in the scheduling office. I had built the safety department from nothing. Terminated. I repeated. Jessica, does Mr. Sanders know about this? Mr. Hughes has full autonomy over personnel, she said. Please hand over your company badge, your phone, and your laptop. One of the security guards stepped forward, holding a cardboard box. I need to clear my personal effects, I said, reaching for a framed photo of my daughter on my desk. We will mail your personal items to you, the guard said, stepping between me and the desk. You need to leave the premises immediately. It was a humiliation designed to break me. They wouldn't even let me take my coffee mug. They wanted to march me through the yard, past the men I had worked with for a decade, to show everyone what happens when you stand up to Benjamin Hughes. I handed over my badge. I placed my company phone on the desk, but my purse, with the black box inside, was slung tight across my body. Fine, I said. I'm leaving. We walked out of the trailer. The compressors were screaming in the distance, a deafening noise that covered the sound of my boots on the gravel. I could see the red dust cloud rising above the dry dock, drifting lazily over the water. It was a visible crime, happening in broad daylight. Tony was standing by the gate. He took off his hard hat as I approached, a gesture of respect. He looked sick to his stomach. I'm sorry, Emilia, he mouthed. I paused for just a second. Keep your head down, Tony, I said. And keep your daily logs. You're going to need them. As the security guard pushed the turnstile open and I stepped onto the public sidewalk, the heavy metal gate clanged shut behind me. I stood there for a moment, the wind whipping my hair across my face. I was unemployed. I was 58 years old in a shrinking industry. I had just been discarded like scrap metal. But as I touched the hard drive through the leather of my purse, I didn't feel defeated. I felt dangerous. Benjamin thought he had just removed a roadblock. He didn't realize he had just handed the map to the enemy. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and took a deep breath. Then, I pulled out my personal cell phone. I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't dialed in 3 years, but who I knew would pick up on the first ring. Paisley Price, EPA Enforcement. Hello, Benjamin, I whispered to the empty car. Let's see how much that efficiency really costs you. My car was a modest, 10-year-old sedan, reliable and unremarkable. It was parked in the furthest corner of the employee lot, now officially trespassing on Sanders Shipyard property. I sat there for a long time, watching the gray clouds scud across the sky, mirroring the turmoil in my gut. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, furious adrenaline. They thought they had stripped me. They took my badge, my laptop, my access to the servers. They thought that by escorting me out like a criminal, they had silenced the only voice of dissent. Benjamin Hughes was a fool. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small, ruggedized external hard drive. It was heavy in my hand, a dense brick of data. I called it the black box. For the last 6 months, ever since Benjamin took over, I had felt the shift. The subtle pressure to ignore minor infractions, the delayed approvals for safety equipment, the way he rolled his eyes during my weekly compliance briefings. I knew where this was heading. So, I prepared. Every Friday afternoon, before I left for the weekend, I ran a backup. Not to the company cloud, which Benjamin's IT guys could wipe with a keystroke, but to this drive. I plugged it into my personal tablet just to check. The file directory popped up, a comforting list of folders: air quality logs, water discharge permits, hazardous waste manifests asterisk, and the most damning folder of all, communication archive Hughes. I opened a file from 2 weeks ago. It was an email I had sent to Benjamin after a routine inspection of the blasting equipment. Subject: critical failure, containment skirt inspection from Emilia Wood to Benjamin Hughes. Date: October 24. Benjamin, the primary containment skirt on dry dock 4 is showing significant wear and tear. Multiple stress fractures in the canvas are visible. If we proceed with the hull blasting next month without replacing sections B and D, we risk a catastrophic breach. The replacement cost is $12,000. Please approve the attached requisition immediately. Emilia. And his reply, timestamped 10 minutes later. Emilia, we are over budget on maintenance this quarter. Patch it. We don't have time to order new custom canvas. Make it work. BH. Make it work, I whispered, reading the words on the screen. That email was a smoking gun. It proved he knew about the risk. It proved he consciously chose to save $12,000 at the expense of federal law. It proved willful negligence. And I had more. I had photos of rusty drums leaking oil that he refused to pay to have hauled away. I had audio recordings of safety meetings where he interrupted me to tell the crew that safety is important, but deadlines pay the bills. I had 5 years of perfect compliance records under the old management to contrast with the chaotic mess of the last 6 months. The black box wasn't just data. It was my career, my integrity, and now it was my weapon. I unplugged the drive and tucked it safely into the inside pocket of my jacket, right against my heart. I started the car. The engine purred to life, a familiar sound in a world that had suddenly turned strange. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to war. I drove to a small coffee shop about 10 miles away from the shipyard, a place where none of the crew ever went. I needed neutral ground. I ordered a black coffee and found a corner table with my back to the wall. My phone felt heavy in my hand. Calling Paisley Price was a nuclear option. Once I made this call, there was no going back. The EPA didn't do friendly warnings. They did raids. They did audits that shut down companies for months. They levied fines that bankrupted owners. I took a deep breath and dialed. The phone rang twice. Emilia. The voice was warm, surprised, but instantly alert. It's been ages. Is everything okay? Paisley Price wasn't just a contact. She was family. 20 years ago, she was a fresh-faced college grad I hired as an intern. I taught her everything she knew about industrial compliance. I taught her how to read a manifesto, how to spot a falsified log, and how to stand up to angry foremen. When she moved to D.C. to join the EPA, we stayed in touch, trading Christmas cards and occasional industry gossip. Paisley, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need to talk to you, not as a friend, but as an enforcement officer. The warmth instantly vanished from her voice, replaced by a professional sharpness. What's going on, Emilia? You're scaring me. I was just fired from Sanders Shipyard, I said, for refusing to violate the Clean Water Act. There was a silence on the line. Then, tell me everything. I spent the next 20 minutes laying it out. The deterioration of the equipment, the pressure from Benjamin, the red tag incident this morning, the dust cloud I saw rising as I was escorted off the property. He ordered the crew to blast with a compromised skirt. Paisley asked, her voice tight. Yes, and he physically removed my red tag. I have a photo. Jesus, Paisley breathed. That's criminal, Emilia. Literally. Removing a lockout/tagout device is a federal offense on its own, never mind the discharge. I have the documentation, I said. Emails, logs, photos, everything is on a drive. Where are you now? She asked. Coffee shop on 4th and Main. Stay there. I'm in the regional office today, actually, just an hour away. I can be there by noon. Paisley, I said, hesitating. If you do this, if you come down on them, it's going to hurt a lot of good people. Tony, the guys in the yard, they'll lose work. They're already in danger, Emilia, she said firmly. If that lead dust is blowing into the yard, they're breathing it. Benjamin Hughes is poisoning his own workforce to save a buck. You aren't hurting them by calling me. You're saving them. She was right, I knew she was right, but it still felt like betraying my home. Okay, I said, I'll wait for you. When Paisley walked into the coffee shop 2 hours later, she looked every bit the federal agent. Sharp blazer, serious eyes, a badge on her belt. She hugged me tight, then sat down and opened her laptop. Show me, she said. I handed her the black box. For the next 3 days, I became a ghost. Paisley had taken the drive, but she needed more. She needed current, irrefutable proof of the ongoing violation to secure a warrant for a surprise inspection. The EPA operated on evidence, not just hearsay from a disgruntled ex-employee. "We need to catch them in the act," she had said. "We need video of the discharge, and we need air quality readings from the perimeter." So I went back to the shipyard, not through the front gate, but to the public park across the narrow channel of the harbor. It was a popular spot for jogging and fishing, offering a clear view of Dry Dock 4. I sat on a bench with a high-powered camera Paisley had lent me, a massive lens that looked like something a paparazzi would use. Next to me, concealed in a picnic basket, was a portable air quality monitor provided by the agency. It was cold. The wind cut through my coat, but I sat there for hours, watching the shipyard operate without me. I saw the clouds of red dust puffing out from the side of the ship every time the wind gusted. I saw the crew working faster than I had ever seen them work, clearly under pressure. And then I saw something else. On the second night, around 8:00 p.m., lights flickered on in the dry dock. "They're working a night shift," I whispered into my voice recorder. "Sanders Shipyard is not permitted for night operations. The noise ordinance prohibits heavy machinery after 6:00 p.m. I zoomed in with the camera. I could see the sparks of welding and the floodlights illuminating the hull. Benjamin was pushing them around the clock to finish the job before anyone noticed the mess they were making. I watched as a forklift driver, clearly exhausted, nearly tipped a pallet of waste barrels into the water. My heart leaped into my throat. He corrected at the last second, but it was a near miss that would have been a reportable incident if I were there. But I wasn't there. I was just a spectator with a telephoto lens. The air monitor beeped softly in the basket. I checked the reading. Lead levels, elevated. Particulate matter 2.5, critical. The wind was carrying the dust right across the channel, into the park where kids played during the day. I felt a surge of anger that burned hotter than the cold wind. This wasn't just about my job anymore. This was about my community. Benjamin Hughes was treating our air and water like his personal dumpster. I snapped photo after photo, time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. On the third morning my phone buzzed. It was Paisley. "We have enough," she said. "The warrant is signed. We're moving in tomorrow at 900. I need you to be nearby, but not visible. I might need you to verify locations." "I'll be there," I said. I packed up the camera and the monitor. I looked across the water at the shipyard one last time. The massive hull was almost stripped clean, ready for paint. Benjamin probably thought he had gotten away with it. He probably thought he was a genius. "Enjoy your last calm morning, Benjamin," I thought. "The storm is coming." The morning of the raid felt unnaturally quiet. I sat in my car, parked a block away from the main gate, watching through the windshield as the world continued to turn. People walked dogs, a delivery truck rumbled by, but inside my chest a countdown clock was ticking. At 8:55 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was Paisley. "We're 2 minutes out. Stay put." At exactly 9:00 a.m., a convoy of 4 black SUVs turned the corner. They didn't have sirens, but they moved with a synchronized purpose that screamed authority. They bypassed the security guard at the gate, who scrambled out of his booth, waving his arms in confusion. The lead vehicle simply flashed a badge through the window, and the gate arm rose. They were in. I imagined the scene inside. The sudden silence as engines were cut. The confusion of the workers. The panic in the administrative offices. The EPA didn't knock. They swarmed. I pictured Benjamin Hughes in his office, sipping his artisanal coffee, looking at spreadsheets that showed how much money he was saving by ignoring my warnings. I pictured the color draining from his face as he looked out the window and saw federal agents deploying around the dry dock. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "We've secured the perimeter. We're proceeding to the offices. I need you to confirm the location of the hazardous waste manifests. Are they still in the filing cabinet in your old office?" "Yes," I replied, my fingers trembling slightly. "Second drawer down, labeled HW 2023, unless he moved them." "He didn't move anything," Paisley said grimly. We found the red tag you mentioned in the trash can outside the compressor shed. Good thinking, taking a photo of it before he ripped it off. Is the operation shut down? I asked. Completely, she said. We've issued a cease and desist order for all hull work until further notice. We're taking samples from the water and the soil around the containment skirt. It's bad, Emilia. The ground is practically red with lead dust. I told him, I whispered. I told him. Stay close, she said. We might need you to identify some of the specific chemicals they were using if the labels are missing. I sat there for another hour, watching the flashing lights of a police cruiser that had arrived to assist with crowd control. Workers were being interviewed in the parking lot. I saw Tony, his head in his hands, talking to an agent with a clipboard. I felt a pang of guilt. Tony was a good man, he didn't deserve this. But then I saw Benjamin. He was being escorted out of the building by two agents, not in handcuffs, but clearly under duress. He was shouting, pointing at the shipyard, his face a mask of fury. He looked like a child whose favorite toy had been taken away. I shrank down in my seat, not wanting him to see me. This was his reckoning, not mine. The next few days were a blur of legal maneuvering. I wasn't allowed back on site, but Paisley kept me updated. The EPA had found everything I said they would, and more. They found drums of unlabeled solvents leaking into the storm drains. They found records of safety meetings that never happened, with forged signatures, including mine, clumsily copied from old documents. They found that the containment skirt I had flagged was not just torn, but completely missing in sections where the hull curved out of sight from the main yard. Benjamin Hughes, of course, went on the offensive. I received a call from a lawyer representing Sanders Shipyard 3 days after the raid. Ms. Wood, the lawyer said, his voice oily and smooth. We are conducting an internal investigation into the events leading up to the EPA action. Mr. Hughes claims that the compliance failures were due to your negligence prior to your termination. He alleges that you failed to maintain the equipment and that his actions were an attempt to correct your mismanagement. I laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. He's blaming me for the equipment I begged him to replace, for the protocols I wrote that he ignored. He has produced emails, the lawyer continued, where you discuss budget constraints. Budget constraints he imposed, I shot back. Check the dates. Check the senders. Every request I made for maintenance was denied by him or his predecessor, and I have the originals. We would like to schedule a deposition, the lawyer said. Talk to the EPA, I said, and hung up. I knew what Benjamin was doing. He was trying to muddy the water. He was hoping that if he threw enough accusations at me, some of it would stick, or at least create enough doubt to lower the fines. He was betting that a 58-year-old woman with no job and a damaged reputation would fold under pressure. He didn't know about the black box. I called Paisley immediately. He's trying to frame me. Let him try, she said, her voice steely. We have the metadata, Emilia. We have the timestamps on your files. We have the deleted emails he tried to scrub from the server, which, by the way, is a felony in itself during an investigation. He's digging his own grave with a backhoe. I want to testify, I said. If there's a hearing, I want to be there. There will be a hearing, she promised, and you'll be the star witness. The hearing was held in a sterile conference room at the regional EPA office, not a courtroom, but it felt just as serious. A panel of 3 administrative judges sat at the head of the table. On one side, Benjamin Hughes and a phalanx of high-priced lawyers. On the other, Paisley and her team. I sat in the back, a silent observer until called. Benjamin looked tired. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He wouldn't look at me. The EPA presented its case methodically. Photos of the red dust on the water. Soil samples showing lead levels 50 times the legal limit. Witness statements from the crew confirming the order to just blast it. Then Benjamin's lawyer stood up. The defense contends, he began, that Mr. Hughes was acting on information provided by his safety officer, Ms. Wood. He believed the containment was sufficient based on her previous reports. The decision to remove the tag was a management override based on the understanding that the hazard was minor and had been mitigated. Mitigated how? One of the judges asked. By a visual inspection, the lawyer stammered. Visual inspection by whom? The judge pressed. Mr. Hughes is not a certified industrial hygienist. Ms. Wood is. We believe Ms. Wood had a vendetta against the new management, the lawyer pivoted. She was resistant to change. Her actions were obstructionist. Paisley stood up. Your Honors, I'd like to call Emilia Wood to the stand. I walked to the front of the room. I swore to tell the truth. Ms. Wood, Paisley asked, did you inform Mr. Hughes of the specific risks associated with the containment failure on November 12th? Yes, I said clearly. In writing, on October 24th, and verbally on the morning of the incident. Do you have proof? I do. I pulled out the black box. Paisley plugged it into the projector. The screen lit up with the email chain. The one where I detailed the $12,000 repair cost. The one where Benjamin replied, budget denied, make do. A murmur went through the room. Benjamin's lawyer shuffled his papers nervously. Then, Paisley opened the audio folder. This is a recording from the safety meeting on November 1st, she said. My voice filled the room, calm and professional. We need to address the containment skirt on Dock 4. It's failing. Then Benjamin's voice, loud and dismissive. Stop whining about the skirt, Emilia. It's fine. We have a schedule to keep. If a little dust gets out, the tide will take it. That's why we're on the ocean. The room went dead silent. The tide will take it, the judge repeated slowly, looking at Benjamin with an expression of pure disgust. That is quite a statement, Mr. Hughes. Benjamin turned a shade of pale gray. He whispered something furious to his lawyer, who just shook his head and closed his folder. I have nothing further, Paisley said. I looked at Benjamin one last time as I stepped down. He was staring at the table, defeated. The arrogant executive who thought rules were for other people had just been undone by his own words, recorded and preserved by the woman he underestimated. The paper trail didn't lie, and neither did the black box. The fallout was swift and brutal, but not in the way Benjamin expected. He thought he could bury me with lawyers and corporate speak. Instead, he buried himself. 3 weeks after the hearing, the official notice of violation arrived at Sanders Shipyard. I wasn't there to see it, but Tony called me later that night. Emilia, he said, his voice thick with a mixture of awe and fear. You should have seen his face. The courier brought it right to his office. Certified mail, big, thick envelope from the EPA. How much? I asked, holding my breath. I heard him screaming, Tony said. Screaming at Jessica, screaming at the walls. He threw a stapler through the glass partition of his office. The rumor is $600,000. 600,000, I repeated, letting the number sink in. It was massive. For a shipyard operating on thin margins, a fine like that was a death sentence for the quarterly profit. It would wipe out the entire profit from the whole job Benjamin had rushed, and then some. And that's not all, Tony continued, lowering his voice. The owner is coming. Mr. Sanders himself. He's flying in tomorrow morning. Benjamin is trying to spin it, saying it was a rogue employee. But everyone knows the truth. The EPA report is public record now. Is he still in charge? I asked. For now, Tony said, but the mood here is like a funeral. Everyone is terrified they're going to shut us down. They won't shut you down if they pay the fine and agree to the corrective actions, I said, trying to reassure him. The EPA wants compliance, not bankruptcy. Yeah, well, Tony sighed. Benjamin is saying we can't afford the retrofits the EPA is demanding. He's talking about layoffs. My heart sank. That was always the way. The executives made the mess and the workers paid the price. Don't worry, Tony, I said, a plan forming in my mind. Mr. Sanders isn't stupid. He likes money too much to let his shipyard sink over one bad manager. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. The vindication was sweet, but the reality was still harsh. I was unemployed and the industry was small. Everyone knew I was the whistleblower. But then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. This is Emilia Wood, I answered. Ms. Wood, a deep, gravelly voice said, this is Robert Sanders. I believe we have some unfinished business. I sat up straight, the owner, the man who signed the checks but rarely visited the yard. Mr. Sanders, I said, keeping my voice steady, to what do I owe the pleasure? I've been reading some very disturbing reports, he said. About fines, about negligence, about a certain former employee who seems to know more about my shipyard's operations than my current director of operations. I did my job, Mr. Sanders, I said. I protected the company. Benjamin Hughes chose to ignore that protection. I'm beginning to see that, he said dryly. I'm flying in today. I'd like you to meet me at the yard, in the boardroom, 2 o'clock. Am I being rehired? I asked bluntly. He paused. Let's just say we need to discuss the future of Sanders Shipyard, and right now, that future looks very expensive unless we make some changes. I'll be there, I said. I walked into the boardroom at 1:55 p.m. It was the same room where I had given countless safety briefings to board managers. Now, it felt like a courtroom. Mr. Sanders sat at the head of the long mahogany table. He was an older man, sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet authority that comes from old money. Benjamin Hughes sat to his right, looking like a man facing a firing squad. He was pale, sweating, and his tie was askew. Jessica from HR was there too, looking terrified, clutching a notepad. Ms. Wood, Sanders said, gesturing to a seat opposite Benjamin. Thank you for coming. I sat down, placing my hands on the table. Mr. Sanders. Let's cut to the chase, Sanders said, his eyes drilling into Benjamin. The EPA has levied a fine of $600,000 against this company for willful violations of the Clean Water Act. They have also mandated a complete overhaul of our hazardous waste protocols and a third-party monitor for the next 2 years. He slid a thick document across the table toward Benjamin. This is the consent decree. It requires a signature from a certified environmental officer to resume operations. Do we have one of those, Benjamin? Benjamin swallowed hard. We are currently interviewing candidates. We fired the only one we had, Sanders corrected him coldly, for doing exactly what this decree now requires us to do. He turned to me. Emilia, I've reviewed the files, the emails, the warnings. You were right every step of the way. I tried to tell him, I said, not looking at Benjamin. I know, Sanders said, and because he didn't listen, we are now in a hole that could bury this company. He looked at Benjamin. Benjamin, you are relieved of your duties effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Benjamin stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You can't do this. I saved you money on the hull contract. I brought in the naval job. You cost us a fortune in fines and reputation, Sanders snapped. Get out. 2 security guards stepped forward, the same ones who had escorted me out weeks ago. They took Benjamin by the arms. He didn't fight, but the look of shock on his face was worth every sleepless night I had endured. As the door closed behind him, Sanders turned back to me. Now, he said, his voice softening. Emilia, I need you back. We need to implement these protocols immediately or we lose our operating license. I'm offering you your old job back. With a raise, 20%. I looked at him. I looked at the shipyard outside the window, the place I had given 15 years of my life. No, I said. Sanders blinked. Excuse me. I won't come back as an employee, I said. I won't be subject to the whims of the next Benjamin you hire. I won't be fired for doing my job again. Then what do you want? He asked. I want a consulting contract, I said. Independent, retainer, triple my old salary. And I answer only to you, Mr. Sanders, no one else. I will be the third-party monitor the EPA requires. I will sign off on the work. And if I say stop, the yard stops. No questions asked. Sanders looked at me for a long moment. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He saw that I wasn't asking, I was dictating terms. Triple, he asked, a faint smile touching his lips. It's cheaper than the fine for the next violation, I pointed out. He picked up a pen and signed the consent decree. Done. Welcome back, Ms. Wood. I'm sitting on the porch of my new home office, a small cottage overlooking the harbor, just a mile down the coast from the shipyard. The storm has passed, leaving the sky a brilliant, washed-clean blue. From here, I can see the cranes of Sanders Shipyard. They're moving. The dry dock is full, but there are no red clouds of dust. The containment skirts are new, bright white against the rusty hulls. The water in the channel is clear. Benjamin Hughes is gone. I heard he tried to get a job at a logistics firm in another state, but the EPA violation is a matter of public record. His name is toxic in the industry. He's uninsurable. As for me, I have my own consulting firm now, Wood Environmental Solutions. My first client was Sanders Shipyard, but word got around. Other companies, scared straight by the $600,000 fine, started calling. They wanted someone who could keep them legal, someone who wasn't afraid to say no. I visit the yard twice a week. Tony is still the foreman, and he greets me with a grin every time. The crew knows that when I show up, things are done right or not at all. They respect that. They know I saved their lungs as much as I saved the company. Life has a funny way of balancing the books. I lost my job because I refused to compromise my integrity. I got it back, and then some, because that integrity was the only thing that had any real value in the end. There's a lesson here, one I wish I could tell every young person starting out in a tough industry. Mistakes were made. I trusted that the system would protect me just because I was right. I thought my title and my years of service were a shield. They weren't. When profit is on the line, loyalty is often the first thing to go. I should have documented everything sooner. I should have had that black box ready from day one, not just when things got bad. But the lesson I learned is this: your integrity is your currency. It's the one thing they can't take from you in a firing. They can take your badge, your laptop, your office. But they can't take the fact that you know the rules and you follow them.